Now that the camera's back.
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
This episode is brought to you by Sunday Swagger.
Yeah. The pink and teal hat, no doubt.
Gotta love a good technical difficulty.
Yeah. So,
But,
there's a lot of push and pull there. That's and the economic, affordable housing from a single family perspective. Here's the real bogey is, I don't think there's any solution to it. At least not in our lifetime.
Yeah.
In a way that people will accept it. I think this is going to be with us forever.
Give your best foot forward.
What's that?
Give your best foot forward.
Yeah, prices aren't going to go down. You can. This is a national problem. In Lexington, I feel like it's a little worse than everywhere else, or not everywhere else, but a lot of other places. We're close to the high end of the average where the problem is. But you couldn't build an affordable house, by income, ratio standards. The starter house industry doesn't exist anymore. It really doesn't. I remember 15 years ago we were talking about that, and I'm like, NAHB was even saying it's going to go away. There's just there's no chance. If you're to build even a $200,000 house, you couldn't get between the land price and price of the raw materials and permitting, all the price of all that has to go nationwide. 28% of the cost of every house has to do with is a government regulation or process of some point. That's the cost to get it through zoning, the time it takes it to get it through zoning, tariffs on lumber, permit fees, and all the costs that go in with everything. That's a lot. Well, they aren't going to, all that stuff is there's not more trees in order to get lumber from, not less. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and there are more families coming on.
It's
Those supply and demand, they're going opposite directions. Those prices aren't going to come back down in a way that's significant enough. You'll get volatility, but they're not going to come down in a way that's significant enough to fix that. But even if you could get there, a builder is on at that point, it's a thin margin. So even if it sounds like it's great, oh, hey, you're 10%, $20,000 of profit in a house if you're making 10%. It doesn't take much of a mistake or one price change between the time that you started and the time that you finished.
Yeah, to wipe out a whole margin.
You've wiped out the entire margin.
Yeah.
Sounds great on a percentage basis, but in real dollars, that can go away really fast.
Yeah.
So the incentive for builders to build at that level is also.
So this is why homes are so poorly built anymore.
That's
what I'm hearing.
Honestly, it's part of it.
Is that why you're laughing?
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut on that one.
I know.
I don't build a house, so we develop lots, but we don't build the houses. So
I don't know how many. My wife and I have always rented.
Sure.
And the home we're in right now was built in 2019. We moved in it less than 24 months after it was built. And you got the nail pops and crack in the ceiling. You got the pantry, which has one exterior facing wall. And in the summer it's hot. In the winter it's cold because they saved 2 cents on fiberglass insulation to go in that wall.
It was probably more than 2 cents.
I know, but you get. I'm exaggerating, of course.
yeah, of
but
course,
they're nickeling and diming like every part. And we're hearing the reason.
But let's go back.
Why.
Let's go back to the old Tip O'Neill. Back then he would say a million. Now he would say billions. A billion here, a billion there. And pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Real money.
Well, $100 here and $500 there and $200 there. It adds up, and it's not just materials. Honestly, there's finding skilled labor that can do things the way they used to be done for a price that somebody can make a living at. The materials are, hey, let's mass produce them and get them out as fast as we can. When you talk about poor quality, it's finish and appearance kind of stuff. The houses aren't going to start falling down. Building codes haven't made them less good. They're better. They're fine from that standpoint. Do they look the same? Do they have dental molding and crown molding can you tell that a craftsman came and sanded the joints, by hand that he didn't used to do, you can absolutely tell the difference. I don't know that there's that many people out there that could even do it. There's plenty of the ones that'll work. You're dealing in a world where it's not white collar comparable pay, and it's hard, and the people that are trying to find labor are to do that stuff it's very, very difficult. They're looking for solutions all the time.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of stresses, and now with tech and everybody wants to be a YouTuber
and construction in
they don't
general.
wanna
I
get
will
their
tell
hands
you
dirty.
there are several industries that have gotten hit very, very hard by the opioid crisis and all those kind of things. But construction would probably be ranked, if not one of the top industries that's hit by that.
Wow.
So, I don't know. I'm not trying to sound super upbeat.
No.
This is great.
It's just
well,
hard,
this
man.
has
I
been
mean,
fun.
it's hard right now.
No.
Yeah, no.
Well,
You're like, okay, there's the
Hey,
door. Get the hell
reality
out.
is what it is.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
It's brutal. And now you got interest rates that, in today's world, that's really rough. That's not a permanent problem, but you got to navigate it to where you are now. And we all know that, when pricing goes up faster than they come down. Even if those rates come back down, the market sort of resets, and hopefully the guys that, they're not lowering those prices because whatever they got squeezed on today, I made a little bit today, just kept it going. I'll try to make what I should have made back.
Yeah.
When it gets good. And
I will preface with this, though. As Andy mentioned, we don't typically do residential. We do commercial, which in our developments and construction, we leave no stone unturned. So I will say that.
yeah.
We won't cheap you out on your
Did I
installation.
just put you in a bad light?
No, not at
No,
all.
not
You just
at
have to
all.
be-
Not at all.
You just have to be. People are wise now. I mean, you just have to be realistic to what the costs are in today's world,
Yeah.
and what you get for what you pay. It's tough.
So what's going on in the commercial world? I mean, we hear right now everything is residential, in the news that we talk about, or that we hear about.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the commercial real estate and development world?
Office is super, super tough.
What do you mean by that?
There's not much growth in the construction. There's higher than normal vacancy rates.
Is that all still a post-COVID thing?
Yeah, and I mean, people are starting to come back, but it's not. They're not coming back to the point where it's right. It's raising the market. So that's going to be difficult because you got higher than normal vacancy rates. You're not getting the rents you used to, so your net operating incomes are down at a time where your interest carry has gone from, depending on when you did your deal, mid 4s in interest rates to high 7s. Let's just round those numbers and say your financing costs have doubled. That's a really bad situation for cash flows and owners' ability to hold on and maintain buildings. So
how do we fix
which
it?
leads to a banking. Well, you create
Is it a
jobs and
lot
go
of
back to
things
work
moving at the same time?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
time will fix that because you'll get some growth that will eventually sort of fill this stuff back up. Hopefully, you avoid massive damage in between those times. But there's other parts of the market that are that are pretty good. The industrial market's still relatively strong. Retail seems to be fine. I mean, a while ago retail was singing the blues. Amazon was coming out, and retail was going to be the end of the world. And again, I say I'm sounding negative, not to sound negative, because I've lived through the death of the office market about 5 times in my career, and it's never happened. So that will come back. That's kind of a cultural thing too. But productivity goes down when people work from home. That's proven.
Yeah.
I tried to get him to let me work from the beach. He said no.
I said no. Yeah, yeah.
Get back here.
And so and over time, right now you've got a tight workforce, and it's kind of a seller's market if you're selling your services as an employee or as labor. Those things will kind of equalize themselves back out. At some point, an employer's going to say, "Get back into the office," and they're going to have the power to do that at some point. Right now, you just kind of have to take what you can get, and time will fix all that. So, in the positive light of all the negativity, is this stuff all goes in cycles. We're not in all this stuff forever.
So do you feel like Lexington is doing some of the right things to help to resolve that here locally? Do you feel like we're maybe not?
I feel like we need job growth.
What would you do to help stimulate that?
You have to have some place to put them. I mean, honestly, you don't have housing stock to house employees. Denver faced this not too long ago, where, I mean, it was very clear they had to turn away. There were people that were interested in locating headquarters there and those kind of things that couldn't do it because they couldn't find affordable places for their people to live. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, you have to have a workforce, and you have to keep that workforce happy, or you're going to lose them. So, you know, this is sort of that similar situation. I mean, you know, expansion of the boundary is. I hate to be the hey, he's a developer, so he wants the boundary expanded. I just hate to be that guy, you know. But we haven't done it in a really long time. Mm. You know, we base a lot of this stuff off of, say, Portland, where Portland was the first to do this, and we thought that was a great idea, so let's do what Portland's done. Well, since we instituted ours about the same time frame, if I have I'm going to be off by a number or two, so if somebody emails in and tells me I'm wrong, it's going to be slightly wrong, but not.
I don't have a clue, so I'm just going to say
We've basically expanded our boundary 2 or 3 times in the same amount of time that they've expanded their boundary 53 times.
Wow.
Now, they do it in small little chunks, you know. So there's part of that is you're looking at acreage versus how many times they've did, volume, how many times they do it. But, you know, it's a fight here. It's hard to do it, you know.
What's the biggest hang up? Who is the biggest hang up?
Horse industry.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't need to go deep into that. That's just don't turn a single blade of grass into something other than a single blade of grass, not ever. Yeah. In Lexington, horses are more important than people.
There's the soundbite right there.
If we could take a note, and Portland's done well with the small growth that they've taken over the years, but when a business has come in, and you're not going to hear me say much about Portland, you're going to hear me say that again, but if we have businesses that are coming here wanting to relocate their headquarters to Lexington, and we're saying, hey, let's carve out some land for you over here, and we can all amicably do it together, that's smart growth. That's working together, all of us coming to the table and saying, find a headquarters here, we're creating jobs, we're creating development, and we're finding the right location for them. The problem is that everyone digs in their heels, and you've got one side that says don't do it, one side that says completely do it, but there's the compromise. And so every 20, 25 years now, we're looking at, 10,000, 5,000 acres. This one was 5,000 or up to 5. That's going to be the best solution moving forward is work together. Yeah. And don't just dig in your heels and say, keep the blade of grass or expand all of it, get rid of the horse farms. No, it's not. It's neither one of those. It's just we can find you here, we can find your home, and we can find it affordable for you too. But we need the jobs.
I can make arguments on both sides of the horse industry. I mean, honestly, you can sit there and go, well, you know, how many horse farm owners, you know, they don't live here, they don't have the vested interest that we have and all that kind of stuff. It's a hell of a lot of them. Flip side is, and they employ some people. It's not always how it, but you know, that industry does support when you have Keeneland and all that kind of, and the sales and all that. It supports the economy. That's not a bad thing either. I mean, you know, the idea, despite my quote, that you know, the idea that it has to be all one way or all the others a little, you know, there's the idea that every developer wants to turn every blade of grass into asphalt is a farce as well. I mean, but
it is.
But you know, if you talk to certain interests, they would have you believe that that's the case. Well, that's not the case. I mean, you know, without that industry, I mean, that industry and all industry, that's an industry just like many others. You know, it helps the economy. If the economy is doing well, it helps people that own restaurants. It helps people that own hotels. It helps people that develop real estate. It helps people have nice places to live that can do it. Yeah. I mean, you know, there is a rising tide lifts all ships. And that's
like
you
but
know.
How does a compromise go down though? Between those two interests where one is open land and the other is putting something on it. How do you do both?
Look at where we're looking at expanding right now. I mean, there's a committee that came together of various industries through the city that went and said, here's the best place to grow. Well, you could have that same committee that's working with businesses and corporations that come in here and say, we need 50 acres, we need 100 acres just for our headquarters or our campus or whatever it's going to be. That same committee or of the same nature can sit down and say, all right, this is a good area over here. They identified anywhere between 28 to 5,000 acres. Why can't you do 50? It's the same premise, except for on a smaller scale, and I think that that's more amicable again.
And you can do that.
You can do that.
You've been able to do that through ordinance since since this all started. It's just never been done. Yeah. Because I mean, you've always had what we've had a lot of times in the past. Credit where credit's due. I don't see this as much in the current staff and the way they're doing that, the way that they're doing things. But in the past, if you were a developer, it didn't matter what you did. We say there's a culture of no. It doesn't matter what you propose. You could propose that you wanted to create a zone where you dropped money out of the sky, and that's where people could come and get money, and then they could afford to live and everything else. And the first answer you would get is no. And then you would have to fight like hell to get something, and eventually you'd come to something. I think that the staff and the planning people downtown now, not every developer say this, but I will say this, they understand the pressures in the marketplace to do what we have to do to maintain Lexington as the place we want to do it. And I really do. I mean, they're trying to balance that with what we have, and so, are they changing rules within the boundary to try to maximize what we can get in there and not have to eat up all of that land? They are. The issue, I think, is it's just not going to solve the whole problem. That's not enough. The infill and changing single family, redeveloping it into multifamily, those kind of things. It's a tool. It's a good tool. It's going to contribute. It's just at this point in time, it's not enough to solve the problem.
When you say it's a good tool, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, everything's incremental. So, it is something where you're going to have some developer that has some sort of level of expertise and can go in there and take a 1 or 2 acre spot that's it's in between a couple of buildings. It's ripe for, it's in the right spot, and they know how to make things work in a let's do something really dense, maybe unique. There's some market for that. They don't see the risks that I would see because maybe they know a little bit better about that real specific type of deal, or they don't. Then maybe they're just willing to take on different risks. If they can do that, that's great. But you can't on something that size unless you build a 100-story building. It's only incremental solution to the problem anyway, right. And that's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is, as a tool, it's one of the things that can help. Maybe tool wasn't the right word, but I mean,
no, I thought
should we say no to those deals? Well, yeah. No. I mean, if you can get 10 or 15 or 20 residences of any sort on something like that, that's great. That's one way to make it work.
But it stresses that single-family home situation that we have too, though, right? Because now instead of owning homes, now they're in a.
It stresses a lot of things.
Well, it's I mean, but to do those, it's the same deal. It's expensive. There's just a lot to it. Same deal. If it was a downtown lot developed, 50 years ago, you got to make sure, for a furniture store. What's the plumbing like? What's the electrical service like out there that, now all of a sudden you get people living there that are burning lights and watching TVs and flushing toilets a lot differently. I mean, how much infrastructure improvement do you need, if any? Not every place is going to need some, but it also makes it where 10 or 20 residential units, no matter whether they're rental or not, that's better than nothing. You need it, but we're talking with what we need is in tens of thousands.
Right.
So that's what I mean. But it's a tool.
Incremental.
You should do it, but that's not going to solve your problem.
Yeah.
I mean, and you need enough land to do scalable projects that help that situation.
Makes sense.
And
Now, see, I don't know a ton about this, which is why
Yeah.
I thought this would be interesting because
Yeah.
I'm learning. So I'm probably asking some fundamental
no,
things.
that's
that-
okay.
but
That's okay.
just
I
don't
mean,
know. I'm here to
I don't
learn.
think I'm making up any. If I get one where I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know. I mean, I
Yeah.
certainly, I'm glad Josh answered about working together. He's like, "What's the solution?" I'm like, "Hell, I don't know." I've got some ideas, but
Well, and
There-
it's not just one idea is the correct idea.
That's right.
You have administrations that change over time. If the vision changes between administrations, then it's not cohesive. It's not going to go the same flow. If one has urban infill and development, and the next one says, "All right, we're going to preserve the downtown area, keep it historic, and we're not going to grow. We're going to grow the suburbia area." Well, that's a completely different message than what past multiple years have been. And it changes everything. It changes the planning staff. It changes their vision, and the legislation starts changing. But as Andy mentioned a minute ago, you got 30 homes that sell and say, "All right, we're going to develop this block." If a developer comes in here and says, "We want to grow up now, we're going to put in $30 million to do a 10, 15-story building," well, now you've got in a residential, maybe a residential area. You have historic overlays that you have to deal with, neighbors that are fighting you saying that doesn't belong here. Now, if that developer is coming in from New York, Chicago, Miami, and they're getting pushback after pushback after pushback, they're going to just back out again.
yeah,
So a lot of talk out there about term limits and stuff with politics, of course. So I'm curious, like, what would that do? Because you're outlining this thing that it takes a long time, a lot of vested interest by tons of parties and a lot of this stuff to make it happen. And it just seems like without term limits or how we are currently, you get some people that can be in there long enough to actually see something to fruition, and that plan can actually go from start to finish. But if you start really limiting things, it's constant turnover, right? Like, you have no choice but to always have new people coming in. So does that make the problem worse? Is it not
I'm gonna
going
let
to,
Josh
do you think
answer
that it won't affect it?
first.
Is that too basic of a question? I don't know.
Well, no, I don't think it's too basic of a question. You get somebody that comes in and has 30 years in office. My question back to you is that going to be somebody who's completely and always in touch with societal changes? You have changeover with term limits. Well, you're going to constantly get somebody else that's coming into that position. You're not just dependent on that one person's perspective.
Right.
That one person grew up here and this is all they know. Well, that's all they know. Well, if you get somebody else that changes in that's not from here or is from a different county or is from a different neighborhood, they're going to bring a unique or a different idea to the table. Sometimes it's good, and sometimes it takes years to turn over legislation and change it back. Sometimes it's progressive and it moves forward in the right direction, though, too. So it's a constant tug of war.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of term limits, but
I don't see it from that perspective as making a huge. I mean, that's a political question. I'm glad Josh answered it. From a developer standpoint, you don't have that kind of turnover, term limits and that kind of stuff. It doesn't really. The planning staff does all the background work. They come up with all the plans, and the planning commission, they have to answer to the planning commission, and the planning commission is subject to some turnover. But from the people that we interact with on a day in and day out basis, they don't turn over kind of the way that the elected officials do and appointed officials by elected officials do. And a mix of some of that's not bad. I mean, when you get in there, if you get people that have been on let's say the planning commission and not the staff because they're appointed, if you get guys in there that have been they keep getting reappointed and they've been on the planning commission for 20 or 30 years, as long as it's not the whole commission, that's fine. Institutional knowledge is not a bad thing. Hey, I remember when we did this. Here's what was originally the intent. This is why we did it. And then, if you get young blood coming up, whether it's young or just new blood, let's put it that way, that mix of, okay, I understand why you did it. Things are different now. What if we did it this way? And that ability for, I've always, whether it's the diversity on those commissions, it doesn't always mean, whether it's across racial or socioeconomic or, take your pick kind of. I mean, sometimes it's experience, diversity of experience in terms of time, the same as anything else. It's one of the things where, man, you might get somebody young, so we got to do this. This is a great new thing. That's where you might get somebody else that had been there forever going, like I said, I've seen the
Chill
death
out,
of the
young blood.
I've seen the death of the office market come and go 15 times. I'm just telling you, this sounds great, but here are the perils I see down the road. And it can work the other way. Somebody's been there too long to get stuck in their ways, and you need some fresh ideas. So that I consider that kind of sometimes like a little bit of a healthier push and pull.
Agreed. Agreed. That's a good way of putting it. The institutional knowledge is
huge.
Yeah. It's
In
priceless.
every organization.
Yeah.
At every level, government,
no
private.
No, I didn't say that. Well, let me back up. I'll say that one thing I do appreciate about Lexington's charter is that you can serve your term if you're on council or in the administration. You can serve up to 12 years. Then you can term off. And then you term off for, if you're a district or you're at large, 2 to 4 years. And then you can run back again. And if the people decide that they choose to elect you again back to that position, you can have another 12 years. But you have to come off for a certain period of time. And I do respect that.
Why? Why do you like that?
Well, because it gives that,
For this reason.
it gives an opportunity for maybe a different perspective to come in and offer that perspective. And if the people like it, they can stay with it. Or the voters decide they don't, okay, then that's constant change.
Makes sense. So in the last few minutes, I'm curious what things around Lexington do you wish we had? Like, what don't we have here that you wish maybe we did? Whether it's something fun or, entertainment-wise or something else.
Luminati's Pizza.
Oh, what?
It's called Luminati's Pizza.
Where's that?
It's out of Chicago.
Okay.
It's a deep dish pizzeria.
Got it.
And sponsored by, no.
Yeah.
And if they are expanding down towards the Kentucky market, and hopefully they're going to be here eventually. So if they are listening, we'd love to help you out and find you a location, and you will be appreciated here.
We'll clip this and send it
Awesome.
to them.
I'm way on the different spectrum of this.
Okay.
A world-class art museum and a world-class performing arts center. Away from, which is not to take away from the Singletary Center.
gonna say
What's that?
Singletary.
UK. No, but it's on campus. There's independent downtown away from campus.
Yeah.
It's just, that's not a dig at UK in any way, shape, or form. I just think it would be nice to have something downtown or on the edge of downtown. First of all, you can get growth around that. What you have on campus is surrounded by campus. So, you have development opportunities around those things. That's not why I look at it, but because I look at it as a perspective of you don't feel mentally constrained by the fact that it's something that's going on a college campus, and they do a great job with what they do. But you feel like, I'm not going back onto campus to do this.
Well, I even
I'm
know
going
the
to
people that operate
Yeah.
Singletary, or they're just frustrated. We'll put
I
it
get
that
it.
way with
Sure.
the facility itself.
I understand
It's all
that.
wood in there, and everything just bounces around. You can't hear
Absolutely.
anything.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
whether it's something separate or whether, there was a new type of place where that could happen that, was off campus, and maybe there's some kind of partnership with the university where that happened, and they can redevelop that part of it into other things that they need. For me, it's just more of a selfish, the art museum itself. If you want to go to the art museum at UK, you're going down on the campus. You're constantly fighting the holy hell. Where can I park? And am I going to get towed? And what do I have to do? And it's, again, you just feel like it just feels like it's something that's part of a college campus, and that doesn't appeal to everybody in that way. So I feel like the opportunity to see some of that independently downtown. I'm going to call it downtown, edge of downtown. I mean, you can do it away from town. my envision would be somewhere around downtown. And you know, the venues that we all have for all that kind of stuff are fairly antiquated, and they all do. The Opera House does the best it can, but man, it's tiny and tight. There's just so much, you know. It's neat if you could keep the facade and gut it on the inside and start over somehow or the other. And somebody's going to get mad at me for saying this on this podcast, but you know, it's a neat place. I like it, but it's just not. You know, it's not.
Well, it was built during a time when there were no electronics to amplify, so you had to
none
be
of all
up on
that,
top of each
and
other.
yeah. So I would just love to see a new, modern, you know, true performing arts education and art museum kind of center. You know,
I mean, we have a really strong arts community. I
We
don't know if
do.
it's big enough
we do.
to support a
Huntington-
second place.
You heard me
but,
say Huntington,
yeah.
West Virginia. Huntington has an art museum, and
Mm.
it does really well. They get real exhibits. It's you know, the stuff that travels around the country is hell, it was who did they have not too long ago when the Wyeth, you know, was going across there, that it stopped in Huntington. I mean, you could go see it there. So there are a lot of cities that are smaller than us that have that.
Yeah. Do you think we have a culture here that appreciates stuff like that?
Sure do.
I mean, we see, you know, what is it? Tim McGraw, I think, is on the marquee at Rupp right now to come. And it seems like those acts are huge.
Yeah.
But then we have Singletary Center in the Lexville that plays there, and some of the stuff from the school. And you look in the audience, and it's not always full. You know?
It's not always full. That to me, that kind of goes back. Well, first of all, you got to right size that stuff. You're not going to size a symphony hall with 28,000 seats or 30,000 seats or whatever Rupp Arena has in it.
Oh,
You know?
well, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It's like 1,800, I think, or
Yeah,
so.
but I will tell you
Singletary.
from my personal experience in a lot of these things, I will tell you sometimes the decision on whether to go to something or not to go to it is sometimes driven on where the venue is.
Yeah.
I can't be the only person that thinks that way.
Oh, I agree.
Sure.
I mean,
And
as somebody
so-
that used to play in the Philharmonic all the time,
Yeah.
and even though we had a dedicated parking lot, it was still a pain in the ass to get there.
And so yeah,
You're
so
the one on
so look,
stage, and they
if,
need you there, and
if-
you're trying to find parking.
if
so
I'm
I
going to
couldn't
go,
imagine being
if I'm
there.
going to go to the Philharmonic, if I'm going to go see a comedian, if I'm going to go see a jazz performance that happens, you know, at say the Singletary Center, again, the idea of where I'm going, how am I getting there, what are the logistics, and what are the pains and not pains of going down there to see that, versus if I went downtown, I can go park one time.
right,
I can
walk to dinner,
I can
do this,
walk from dinner
Yeah,
to this. If you build a lot of modern performing arts centers, it's like you have size appropriate, you know, if it's Philharmonic, you're going to have 800, 1,200 seats, maybe more, maybe, I don't know what the right size is, but it's something in that, you know,
around here that's probably right.
where and you may have a jazz or some other small performance hall or, you know, something like that, where it's sort of, or the ability to adjust it, and you've got 300 seats.
Yeah,
And I know that I can go down. I know I've got parking. I know I'm able to go out for a night on the town. I don't have to, and I can get all that. And when it's done, I can go have a drink at a bar, or get a coffee and, you know, dessert after the show, and talk to some people, and then head home one time. That makes a difference to me. And,
I
yeah,
agree. Do you,
yeah.
I mean, surely people there have to know that and be aware of that problem.
You would think.
You would think, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it? I mean, could it be as simple as, like, if there was a space and they wanted to put a parking garage up right next to Singletary, would that fix the problem, do you think? Or is it still, it's at
Nope,
campus?
because it's on campus.
Okay.
In my opinion.
it.
In my
Okay.
opinion. Yeah. in
I
my
know we're going in the weeds
Yeah,
about
sure.
this, but I'm
We
just
are.
kind of interested about
Yeah. I don't think so.
your
I
thinking
think
with that.
I think because I mean it's the same deal. If you want to go, hey, listen, I want to go to I'm going to go see the Philharmonic at, I don't know what time, like 7:00, and you know, a 7:00 show, 8 o'clock show, whatever they do. I'm going to go eat dinner. I got to leave at 5 because I got to go downtown and eat 5:30. I've got to valet park or find a place to park, do all that. Then I've got to make sure I leave in time because I've got to drive from there to that. And I know that Uber's available and it's a thing. It's still something where I have to pay for it a second time.
It's another step.
It's still another
friction
step
in the whole process. Yeah.
And I've got to do that. Then I've got to go, and same deal. If I'm not ready to go home, I got to get in another Uber, or I get back in my car, and I got to drive back downtown again, or to a neighborhood place that I want to go.
Down Rose Street, which is
It's
one lane.
not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
Now, doesn't matter if you're a diehard fan of Chick Corea, and he was playing down at, thinking of people I've seen down at the Singletary Center.
Sure.
You're going to go no matter what. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're going to go. That's not who you're trying to capture. What you want to make it as accessible and as easy for patrons to come and enjoy your shows, and therefore get your message out, whether it's through arts or speakers or whatever, as possible, and so add some fun and entertainment value to it as well. I think it makes it, my personal opinion, makes a difference.
I'm going to keep going down this
No,
for a
that's
second,
okay.
but I think it's interesting as like a particular case study, though. Do you think it's a thing of like UK trying to? And again, this is an example. Not trying to harp on Singletary or UK with this, but
Yeah. If, by the way, I have no knowledge. I feel weird talking about UK like I have any idea what they're doing or what they're talking about.
Yeah, me too.
And
Yeah.
I'm certainly
it's
not
pure
this is
example because
yeah,
we're
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
But
yeah.
do you think it could be like an ownership thing of like, no, we brought this act to Lexington?
Sure.
Because, I mean, I guess another thing could be, hey, you know what? Tomorrow we're going to level Singletary. We're going to move the art museum out. We're going to actually build that in the outskirts of town. We'll call that a UK venue, or we'll partner and we'll do kind of like UK did with Rupp. And like, we'll just go play at that place. We don't own Rupp, but, we go there. The community's adopted Rupp as the
Right.
home. And
Those
we'll do the same
venues-
thing somewhere else.
Those venues take pride in who they bring in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So they want
But if
that.
it's not on campus, do you think a school loses that ownership of bringing that artist and getting the credit? Does credit even matter? Am I making sense?
I just think
You make perfect sense to me. I will tell you personally, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer.
Would you care if it was your school? Would you say like, no, I need credit for this?
I don't know the answer to that either because I don't.
Because then that can validate your value.
I'm going to say
the
something
community,
that's. I'm going
right?
to
By
say something that's fun. I don't care about getting credit for things as long as nobody else gets credit for something I did. So I don't want credit as long as somebody else didn't get credit for my
If
stuff.
I'm not getting the credit. Nobody's getting it.
Well, no, it's, I say that. I say that kind of tongue in cheek.
I know.
If,
came from politics, so it's the
yeah.
opposite for me.
Well, yeah, you.
Sorry.
Yeah,
What you do is not for your name recognition, or it's not for what your name is going to be behind. It's what's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So, that's, if it's something that gets accomplished in this city, it's good for everybody.
Yeah.
I feel that way. I mean, I don't have a good answer for you as to even how I'd feel about it. It's not something I've ever put any, gray cells to work on because it's, but.
I just brought that up because I thought it might be an interesting little thought of kind of what we talked about before of my backyard and people walking through it now when it was green space and this like back and forth of like credit or not credit, and because ego seems like it comes into a lot of this conversation.
What a world would we have if nobody had one of those?
Yeah.
But we do.
Yeah.
So
Wild.
I mean, I am sure that there would be. I mean, I don't think you could just snap your fingers and make it happen. There would have to be a lot of conversations, but I wouldn't have the foggiest clue as to what UK's stance on it would be, and I don't really, honestly, don't know what the city's stance on it would be.
Yeah.
I know, I got an idea that if there was a legitimate proposal, doable proposal, that the city would be behind it. But
Right.
the other part of this, it's hard to raise money, and
We're seeing this with the soccer thing right now, right?
yeah, but
I mean, how many places has that thing been promised to be?
I was gonna say,
Good
you had
gosh.
mentioned, you had asked earlier on, what is the future of development here? What would we like to see? And while my answer was facetious in the first place, but one thing, we are doing a few things that are putting us on the map that stand out from everybody else. We've got a professional soccer league coming here. super excited about. We've got a world-renowned park that's going to be right down the street from us here. That'll have an amphitheater. Talk about these concerts and shows that are becoming here. It doesn't matter.
Red Rocks, like outdoor kind of
to me, it doesn't matter whether it says Town Branch Commons on there or UK or Lexington. Put all 3 names on there. Just bring a good act to Lexington, and stop having everybody go to Cincinnati or Louisville. Let's start being that game changer here.
Yeah. I do have a question about that soccer situation. So, is this a chicken or the egg thing? I mean, were there really that many people screaming that they wanted professional soccer in Lexington? Or was it we have this idea to do this thing and we think we can make some money, so we're going to bring it here and hope to God people will come to it?
This is one of those situations for sure. If you build it, they will come. And there's so much youth soccer focus, and it's growing at such a rapid pace that the city, all the fields are booked. They're all leased out. They're all rented out constantly throughout the entire year, or unless the fields have to give rest. Indoor soccer has taken off. Recreational soccer, school, all of it, it's blown up. So it's something that absolutely it's needed now and in the future. So that complex coming here, again, takes away from Elizabethtown, now has the complex or the tournaments here. Mm-hmm. The professional soccer team, absolutely. It's been called for a long time.
Okay. See, I just don't operate in a universe where that comes up. So in my mind, it's like it came out of nowhere, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't walk down the street and see people talking about soccer. I don't see soccer on any billboards anywhere. I don't see anything in the Facebook group of the neighborhood, which has 7,000 plus homes, talking about soccer. I don't see soccer in our culture. And then that's why I had that question, where it just doesn't seem obvious enough to me. But apparently there's enough of an underground sort of situation. Well, I mean, soccer is the most popular sport in the world.
Same with the Legends, right? Same with the Legends being here, or the Counterclocks, or whatever they may be now. But that's going to be the conversation in 5 years, that you will hear people say, hey, did you go to the game last night? Did you see the game last night? I think that, maybe 10 years. But it is something that I look forward to having that further conversation, and hearing people talk about it. Just like we watched the Wildcats over the weekend. Did you watch the Lexington Sporting Club?
Well, and the only thing I'm with you. I don't hear it in the culture. But Josh is younger than I am, and he's more in tune with all that. And I do know that every kid in the world seems to play soccer, so there's got to be something. But you also look at it, I guess, when I saw it's 5,000 seats. I mean, they're not building the Taj Mahal either. I mean, I think it's going to be a nice stadium, but I think, at least for now, it seems to be probably right-sized, at least.
I mean, from your vantage point, and somebody who's been a councilman, I mean, I'm sure somebody can come into a meeting and propose this, and then you're like, okay, yeah, right? But then there's got to be enough action and enough conversation by the right people to warrant attention to it, and to be like, okay, this is maybe something we should actually consider. Like, how do you what is that threshold for actually taking something seriously, whether it's soccer or something else?
You've got to have the funding for it, and that was the biggest thing behind it. Is, do you have the funding and the backing to have the complex and the stadium come here, and to support the team and their wages? Once you start it, that's the first. I mean, if you don't have the team, you can't have somebody come out to watch the team or support them. Mm-hmm. So you have to build that infrastructure first, and that's exactly what they start to do. But it starts with conversation, of course. Coming to the city and asking for help, asking for partnership in it, and you start the conversation, you get the ball rolling, and the ball is rolling full steam ahead. I hope now, but we've got a location. Finally determined it is going to be in Lexington, and that was my biggest concern.
Out past Jacobson?
Yeah.
Right.
Athens, Boonesboro.
Okay. Basically, out at the interstate interchange out there.
Is that because of that level of access to transportation, getting around? And
Well, they had looked at the site downtown, the rep lot. They had looked at the site off of 6475.
Yeah.
That ED land that we spoke about at the beginning of this conversation. And, all of that was said no. I mean, it wasn't all said no. Excuse me. One of the items was postponed indefinitely. So
What does that
no
mean?
that means no without saying no.
Yeah.
I think
that's
is
no
what that
without
means.
saying
Yeah.
no.
Who gets to say no to that? Who says no to something like that?
Well, the planning commission will make if it was a zone change that needed to come through, they would have made a ruling on it, and then it would have come before the council. If it was shot down or if it was approved, it would have had to go through the council.
Some of those interests, he's afraid to say it, some of those interests that I was alluding to earlier that aren't crazy about development had some say on what they felt about where it was going as well.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. Well, I know I have a lot to do. I know you guys have a lot to do. I appreciate this conversation and providing me some personal insight in a lot of this kind of stuff.
Hope I didn't say
Yeah.
anything that's going to end up with my foot in my mouth. So
So we'll just bleep the whole thing.
make sure you edit all the, don't edit me into trouble, edit me out of trouble. Yeah, how about that?
No, I appreciate
Yeah.
this. This is great. It would be cool to do a follow up after some of the stuff
Whatever you want to do.
keeps
huh?
going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would love to.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to cover? Talk about anything? I'm always just down for a good chat, and wherever it goes, it goes.
This has been a great chat, and I appreciate you having us on.
Yeah,
I mean,
of
we're
course.
very fortunate for the opportunity here in Lexington, but it's been a good conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And I really am, by the way, I really am optimistic. When it comes to the future, I know some of that sound. I mean, we're just in a weird time right now where everything seems to be, especially in our industry, it just sort of stacks up, and having to navigate that's difficult. And there are legitimate issues. I stand by everything I said, but the truth is, we'll all be I say, survive and adapt. That's what we all do, and that's what we will do. And we'll cruise through it all and be better for it. 5 years from now than 10 years from now and 15 years from now.
Well, and just real quick, you were saying, I don't know if we ever fix this or can get in a place where we can. I mean, maybe with enough exposure to real-time information and knowing things because of things like the internet and social media.
Or we
Maybe
change the
we get
definition
that-
of what a fix is. Learn
Yeah.
how to live with it differently than.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe I should even clarify that. What I mean by fix is we're not going to go back to where we can. Somebody's going to be able to build a $200,000 or $250,000 house.
Right,
That-
but
that-
at least you could understand
that
why.
Fix is never coming.
Like right now,
Yeah.
so many people don't understand the why part because they're just, and I don't blame people.
Yeah.
We're living with horse blinders on because we're living our life.
Yeah.
We don't have the time to understand these things that go into why what's happening around us is happening. We just know it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe with enough exposure and things like social media, we're learning a big picture life lesson of patience, maybe, or empathy and kind of understanding I'm not the only person in the world. And just because it was green space before doesn't mean it's always going to be there. And when somebody changes that, I have the, whatever the word is, but the patience or something to,
Or the perspective
or-
to
to understand
accept.
why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all
Who
change
knows?
is hard, and we all hate change. But then what we also notice is that once the change takes place, 5 days later, you've moved on to something else, and you just,
Yep.
honestly, it's like I remember I was talking to my dad the other. We were talking about Todd's Road, and I lived here when Todd's Road was literally a teeny little 2-lane road for 5 miles. I mean, it went.
Todd was still living here, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, Todd. Yeah, it was his road. Yeah, I don't know what happened to old
Young
Todd. Todd was, hell, he didn't like it, so he moved. I mean, it went all the way back to, when you took Todd's Road, it intersected with, you're getting back up in there around, I mean, it was before Man of War was here, and it was all that, and I'll guarantee you at the time, everybody was like, when Todd's Road is, expanding, and now you have Andover coming out there, and you've got, it all came, widened, and oh no, the world's, it's never going to be the same. And
Yep.
those people all go to BW3s and eat, and they have services there. They can get to the interstate easier and all that stuff. And so, at the time they hated it, and then they realized the world's not going to end, and their kids have parks to play in and yards to play in, and it's not as pretty as looking at a horse eating grass, but it's
That is
pretty. It's okay. It is pretty. I totally agree that it's pretty. It's great, but
Yeah, get it.
we live. We live in a society that has the attention span of a flea. Once it happens, we move on to the next thing that we have to worry about.
I think that's
all
called
of a sudden.
TikTok.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
right.
Cool.
That is
Well, thank you guys very
well
much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Lexington Business Show. Go right now, rate and review the podcast. It's how we grow and thrive and how we get more listeners and get to do a lot more cool stuff here on the show. Thank you.